The council chamber floated in the darkness between two burning stars. Inside, the greatest warriors in the galaxy waited in silence. They had protected every living world for longer than most civilizations could remember. They were called the Elders, and their names were spoken with fear by enemies and with hope by friends. Taimin stood at the center of the chamber. His forearms crossed over his chest as his reptilian eyes scanned the faces around him. He had commanded fleets for 600 years. He had never lost a war. Today, his scales were darker than usual, a sign of deep worry among his people. Beside him, Hana flickered like a living star. Her body was made of pure energy, held together by crystalline structures that caught the light from the twin suns outside. She was 800 years old and had planned every major victory the Council had won in the last 3 centuries. Her light dimmed when she was thinking hard. Right now, she was barely glowing at all. At the far end of the chamber, Daehyun shifted his massive frame. He was the oldest warrior alive, 1,200 years of constant battle. His insectoid body bore scars from 1,000 wars. Each mark told a story of survival, of victory, of enemies destroyed and worlds saved. He clicked his mandibles together, a sound that made younger warriors nervous. The hologram at the center of the room showed 12 star systems. All of them were dark now. All of them had been full of life 3 months ago. They call themselves the Ravagers, Hana said, her voice like wind chimes in a storm. They are unlike anything we have faced before. They do not negotiate. They do not retreat. They consume everything and move on. Taimin touched the hologram with one of his clawed hands. The image changed, showing a recording from the last battle. The Ravagers looked like a swarm of dark metal insects, but each one was the size of a building. They moved together like water, flowing around defenses and crushing everything in their path. "We sent the 3rd Fleet to stop them at Korvax Station," Taimin said. His voice was deep and tired. Admiral Kren had 4 centuries of experience. He commanded 8,000 ships. He touched the hologram again. The recording showed the battle. The Elder ships were beautiful, grown from living metal and powered by captured stars. They fired weapons that could crack planets, but the Ravagers simply absorbed the damage and learned. By the end of the battle, the Elder weapons barely hurt them at all. Kren lost 6,000 ships, Taimin continued. The Ravagers lost nothing. They adapted to everything we did. The chamber fell silent. 6,000 ships lost. That was more than they had lost in the last 200 years combined. Daehyun stood up, his full height reaching nearly 3 meters. "Then we send more ships. We send 50,000. We send everything. And if they adapt again?" Hana asked. Her light pulsed with anxiety. "What if 50,000 is not enough? What if we lose everything?" "Then we lose everything," Daehyun said flatly. "But we are Elders. We do not surrender." For 3 days they prepared the largest fleet ever assembled, 50,000 warships, each one a masterpiece of technology and each one commanded by a warrior with at least a century of experience. They gathered at the edge of Ravager space and prepared to attack. The battle was a disaster. The Ravagers had learned even more since Korvax Station. They moved in patterns that confused the Elder targeting systems. They attacked from angles that should have been impossible. They adapted to every tactic within minutes of seeing it. When the Elders tried to retreat and regroup, the Ravagers followed and struck at their weakest points. Daehyun's flagship took a direct hit that tore through 3 decks. The old warrior survived, but barely. Taimin had to order a full retreat, something he had not done in 400 years. When they counted their losses, 20,000 ships were gone. Back in the council chamber, the mood was dark. Elders from across the galaxy appeared as holograms, their faces showing emotions that were rare among their kind. Fear, uncertainty, doubt. "We must seek allies," Hana said. "We cannot win this alone." "Who?" Taimin asked. "We are the strongest military force in the galaxy. Everyone else relies on us for protection." Hana brought up a new hologram. It showed hundreds of applications from different species who wanted to help. Most were from civilizations that were too young or too weak to make a difference. The Elders had always fought their battles alone. They had never needed help before. "Most of these are useless," Hana admitted. She scrolled through the list quickly, dismissing one after another. Then she paused. "But there is one that interests me." The hologram showed a small blue planet orbiting a yellow star. They call their world Earth. They have only been traveling in space for 200 years. They are very primitive by our standards. Then why waste our time with them? Taehyun growled. Because they are offering to send military aid, Hana said. No technology requests, no trade agreements. Just ships and warriors. Taemin looked at the data. Humans lived for less than a century. Most of them died before they reached their 100th year. How could such short-lived creatures possibly help in a war that required centuries of experience? They are children, he said. What can children do that we cannot? I do not know, Hana admitted. But we are losing. Perhaps it is time to accept help even from children. The council debated for hours. Some elders argued that it was insulting to even consider help from such a young species. Others said it would be a waste of resources to coordinate with warriors who had so little experience. But in the end, they were desperate. Taemin made the decision. We will allow a small group of human ships to join us. If they prove useful, we can request more. If not, we lose nothing. The message was sent to Earth. Within days, the humans replied. They were sending 200 ships and 5,000 warriors. The elders laughed when they heard the numbers. 200 ships against an enemy that had destroyed 30,000 elder vessels. It was like bringing a candle to fight a forest fire. But Taemin remembered something his own mentor had told him 5 centuries ago. The universe is large and old. Sometimes it surprises even us. He looked at the hologram of Earth one more time. The small blue planet seemed so fragile, so young. He wondered if the humans knew what they were volunteering for. He wondered if they understood that they were probably going to die. Then again, with lives so short, perhaps they were used to the idea of death. Perhaps that was what made them brave enough to volunteer when they had nothing to gain. Let them come, Taemin said to the empty chamber. Let us see what these humans can do. The human fleet arrived 3 weeks later. Taemin watched them approach on his viewing screen and tried not to show his disappointment. The ships were small and boxy, made from welded metal plates instead of the living materials the elders used. They looked crude, like something a child might build from spare parts. Each one had writing on the side in human language, along with colorful symbols that seemed to serve no tactical purpose. 200 ships. It seemed even smaller now that he could see them. A communication request came through. Taemin accepted it and a human face appeared on his screen. She was small, barely reaching the height of his chest if they were standing in the same room. Her skin was tan, her hair was black and pulled back tightly, and her eyes were dark and focused. I am Captain Ji-woo of the United Nations Space Service, she said. Her voice was clear and strong. We are here to help. Taemin looked at her for a long moment. She was so young. According to the files Hana had prepared, Ji-woo was 34 years old. That meant she had been alive for less time than Taemin's shortest military campaign, and yet she stood straight and met his gaze without fear. I am Commander Taemin, he said. Welcome to the Defense Fleet. Your ships will be positioned in the rear observation area during our next engagement with the Ravagers. Ji-woo frowned slightly. The rear? Sir, we came here to fight. You came here to help, Taemin corrected her. And you will help best by staying out of danger and learning how we conduct warfare. Perhaps your observations will be valuable. He could see Ji-woo wanted to argue, but she simply nodded. As you command, sir. The next battle was scheduled for the Korath Nebula, where Elder Intelligence had detected a large Ravager force. Taemin commanded the assault from his flagship. 40,000 Elder ships moved into position, with the precision that came from centuries of coordination. The human ships stayed far behind exactly where they had been ordered. The battle began with the standard Elder tactics. Heavy bombardment from long range, followed by coordinated formations that had won thousands of engagements. For the first hour, everything went according to plan. Then the Ravagers changed their behavior. They suddenly split their force and swept around the Elder fleet's left flank. But they did not come through open space as expected. Instead, they dove into a nearby asteroid field, using the rocks as cover. The asteroids were moving fast and spinning unpredictably. No sane pilot would try to navigate through them at combat speed. The Elder ships were powerful but large. They needed clear space to maneuver. Taemin tried to adjust his formation, but the Ravagers were already behind his line. Panic started to spread through the fleet. Then something impossible happened. The human ships moved. They did not ask for permission or wait for orders. They simply accelerated directly toward the asteroid field. Taemin watched in shock as 200 human vessels plunged into the chaos at speeds that would get an Elder pilot court-martialed for recklessness. What are they doing? Hana's voice came through his command link. She was aboard her own flagship watching the same impossible scene. The humans flew like nothing Taman had ever seen. They spun and twisted between asteroids, sometimes missing collision by mere meters. They used the rocks as shields and as weapons, calculating angles that elder computers said were too dangerous to attempt. One human pilot flew between two asteroids that were spinning toward each other, passing through the gap with less than 2 seconds to spare. A young human pilot named Subin did something that would be talked about for years. Her small fighter approached a large asteroid that was spinning rapidly. Instead of avoiding it, she flew close and used its gravity to whip herself around at incredible speed. She came out of the maneuver going 3 times faster than before. Aimed perfectly at a cluster of Ravager ships, she destroyed 3 of their capital vessels in a single attack run before anyone realized what had happened. The Ravagers, so good at adapting to elder tactics, had no idea how to deal with the humans. The chaos was too much. The unpredictability was complete. They tried to adjust, but the humans kept doing things that made no tactical sense. Things that should not work but did. By the time the battle ended, the Ravagers had retreated. The Elder fleet was saved, but 40% of the human ships were destroyed or too damaged to continue fighting. 80 ships lost out of 200. Timon felt sick when he saw the numbers. He called Jiwoo to his flagship after the battle. She arrived still wearing her combat suit, with a fresh burn mark on her shoulder where a fire had broken out on her ship. She saluted, then stood at attention. "What you did was incredibly dangerous," Taman said.
"You lost nearly half your force." "Yes, sir," Jiwoo replied.
Her voice was steady despite obvious exhaustion. "How did you do it? How did your pilots navigate that asteroid field at combat speeds?" Jiwoo looked confused by the question. "We had to, sir. Your fleet was in danger, so we did what was necessary. But the calculations alone should have taken hours." "The risk assessment. We did not have hours," Jiwoo interrupted, then caught herself. "Sorry, sir. But there was no time for long calculations. Our pilots made decisions in the moment. They trusted their instincts and their training." Taman stared at her.
"Instincts?"
She was talking about flying multi-ton warships through spinning asteroids at incredible speeds using instincts. Later that night, Hana visited his private quarters. She brought recordings from the battle, specifically focusing on the human fighters. They watched together in silence as Subin performed her impossible maneuver again and again. "I have analyzed their reaction times," Hana said quietly. "Humans process information faster than we do. Much faster. Their neural systems work at incredible speeds." "That cannot be correct," Taman said. "They are so young as a species. How could they evolve such fast processing?" "Because they die so quickly," Hana said. "Think about it. We live for centuries. We have time to learn, time to think, time to plan. Humans have decades at most. Their biology compensated by making them process everything faster. They live faster than we do." Taemin watched Subin's recording again. The young pilot had been 26 years old. She had spent more time in combat in the last 3 months than most elder pilots spent in 50 years. She had learned and adapted because she had no choice. Her short life demanded it. "Request more human ships," Taemin said suddenly, "and send a message to Captain Jiwoo. Tell her I was wrong. They do not belong in the rear. They belong wherever the fighting is hardest." Hana's crystalline body sparkled with surprise. "You are certain?" Taemin nodded slowly. "They saved us today. 80 ships gave their lives to save 40,000. That is not the action of children. That is the action of warriors." He looked at the recordings one more time. The humans flew like they were dancing with death, like they knew their time was short and decided to make every second count. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "We have been fighting wars for millennia," Taemin said. "We have forgotten what it means to have urgency. The humans have not. They cannot afford to forget." In the human section of the fleet, Jiwoo sat with her surviving pilots. They were exhausted and hurt. Some were crying for friends they had lost. But when Jiwoo told them that Commander Taemin wanted them in the front lines for the next battle, every single one of them volunteered. "We came here to make a difference," Subin said, her arm in a medical wrap. "We are not going home until we do." Elder Sunyi had studied biology for 400 years. She had examined thousands of species from across the galaxy. She thought she had seen everything. Then she started examining the human volunteers, and nothing made sense anymore. She stood in her medical bay looking at the readings on her screens. A young human male named Jae-hyun sat on the examination table. He was only 19 years old, which meant he was barely an adult by his species' standards. He smiled at her nervously. Am I going to be okay? He asked. Sunyi did not know how to answer. By human standards, he was healthy. But by the standards of every other species she knew, he was dying. His cells were burning energy at a rate that should kill him. His heart beat so fast it seemed impossible. His brain was firing electrical signals at speeds that would overload most other species' nervous systems. You are perfectly normal for a human, she said finally. But I need to understand something. Does it hurt? Living this way? Jae-hyun looked confused. Does what hurt? Your body is constantly working at what we would consider emergency levels. Your metabolism is incredibly high. You need to eat and rest constantly just to maintain basic functions. Does it cause pain? Jae-hyun shrugged. I guess I have never known anything different. This is just normal for us. Sunyi returned to her office and prepared a report for the council. Her findings were disturbing. Humans did not just live short lives. They burned through them like fire. Every moment cost them energy that other species would conserve. They could not help it. Their biology demanded it. This is why they move so fast, Sunyi explained to the council later that day. They process everything quickly because they must. Their bodies do not give them a choice. Hana studied the report carefully. So they are always in what we would consider an emergency state? Yes, Sunyi confirmed. And the cost is enormous. Their bodies break down rapidly. What we would consider a minor injury can be serious for them. They need constant rest and recovery. And even with all that, they rarely live beyond a century. Dae-hyun clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. So they have perhaps 70 or 80 years to learn everything they need to know. To become warriors, leaders, parents, everything. The council fell silent as they absorbed this information. Taemin had 600 years of experience. Hana had 800. Dae-hyun had 1,200. They had the luxury of spending centuries perfecting their skills. Humans had decades. No wonder they fight with such intensity, Taemin said quietly. They do not have time to be careful. 3 days later, the Ravagers attacked the agricultural world of Themis. It was home to 5 million civilians who provided food for dozens of nearby systems. The attack came without warning. The planet's small defense force was overwhelmed in minutes. The council received the distress call while they were planning their next major offensive. Taemin immediately started calculating a rescue operation. His computers said it would take 16 hours to get enough ships to Themis to mount an effective defense. The civilians had 6 hours before the Ravagers reached the main population centers. We cannot save them, Hana said. Her light was dim with sorrow. We do not have enough time. Then we evacuate who we can, Taemin said. And we make the Ravagers pay for every life they take. Colonel Hyun-soo, who commanded the human forces, was in the command center when he heard this. He was 42 years old with gray hair and old scars. He had led human military forces for 20 years, which meant he had more combat experience than some warriors twice his age in other species. Sir, my ships can reach Themis in 4 hours, Hyun-soo said. Taemin looked at him. Colonel, I have run the calculations. Even if you arrive in time, you do not have enough ships to stop the Ravagers. The probability of success is less than 3%. Then we have a 3% chance, Hyun-soo said. That is better than 0. I cannot order you to go on a suicide mission, Taemin said firmly. You are not ordering us, Hyun-soo replied. We are volunteering. Before Taemin could respond, the human fleet was already moving. All 120 remaining human ships accelerated toward Themis at maximum speed. Taemin could only watch and pray. The humans reached Themis 4 hours later. The Ravagers had already landed ground forces and were advancing on the cities. Hyun-soo sent his Marines down immediately, led by a sergeant named Dong-min who was known for never following standard procedure. Dong-min's tactics made elder observers physically uncomfortable to watch. He used explosives in ways that risked his own troops. He fought the Ravagers in close combat when every manual said to keep distance. He turned the enemy's own biology against them, using their hive mind connection to confuse and disorient them. Private Jae-hyun, the young man Sunyi had examined, was part of Dong-min's unit. His squad was ordered to hold a choke point between the Ravagers and a shelter holding 2,000 civilians. The squad had 23 soldiers. They faced thousands of Ravagers. They held for 2 hours. When elder reinforcements finally arrived, they found Jae-hyun alone at the choke point. He had been wounded 7 times. His armor was broken. His weapon was empty, but he was still standing, still fighting with a piece of broken pipe he had found. Around him were the bodies of 200 Ravagers. Above the planet, Subin and her fellow pilots provided air support. They flew patterns that made elder tacticians dizzy just watching. They dove through Ravager formations using the enemy ships as shields against each other. They calculated angles in their heads that elder computers needed minutes to verify. Commander Bora, the human intelligence officer, coordinated the evacuation from her ship in orbit. She directed traffic, calculated escape routes, and adjusted plans every few seconds as the situation changed. Elder officers watched her work and realized she was making decisions faster than their computers could propose options. Against all mathematical probability, the humans evacuated 2,300,000 civilians. The cost was terrible. 78% of the human ground forces were killed or wounded. 60% of the pilots lost their ships. After the battle, Dae-hyun visited the human medical bay. He had to see for himself. He found Jae-hyun being treated by a medic. The young human had 17 separate injuries. The medic was crying while working, tears running down her face even as her hands moved with perfect precision. "Why do you cry?" Dae-hyun asked her. The medic looked up at him with red eyes. "Because he is 19 years old. He should be studying or playing or learning about life. Instead, he is here, broken and bleeding because we needed someone to stand in that choke point." "He volunteered," Dae-hyun said. "Of course he volunteered," the medic said bitterly. "We all volunteered. That does not make it easier." Dae-hyun looked at Jae-hyun, who was unconscious now. The young human would survive, but he would carry scars for the rest of his short life. And yet he had chosen to stand and fight. He had chosen to hold that position until help arrived, knowing he probably would not survive. For the first time in 1,200 years, Dae-hyun felt something he had almost forgotten. Humility. These humans, with their brief lives and fragile bodies, had accomplished something that all his experience and strength said was impossible. That night, the council met in emergency session. Soon-yi presented new findings. "I believe I understand now why humans fight the way they do. They know they are fragile. They know each life is brief. This does not make them afraid. It makes them fierce, because if they only have a short time, they want that time to matter." Taemin thought about Jiwoo, about Subin, about Dongmin and Jae-hyun and all the others. They flew into asteroid fields and held impossible positions, not despite knowing they might die, but because they knew they would die eventually anyway. The only question was whether their deaths would mean something. "We have lived so long that we have forgotten what it means to truly value time," Hana said softly. "The humans remember. They have to remember. Every moment is precious to them." Dae-hyun stood up. "Then perhaps it is time we learned from them. We are legendary elders, but these children have taught us something we had forgotten." The war was getting worse. The Ravagers pushed deeper into Council territory every day. More worlds fell. More civilians died. The elders fought with all their centuries of experience, but experience was not enough anymore. The enemy adapted too quickly. Hana stood before the council with a proposal that would have been unthinkable 6 months ago. "We must learn from the humans. We must study their methods and incorporate them into our own tactics." The chamber erupted in argument. Elder voices overlapped, some speaking in languages so old that only a few could understand them. The idea was offensive to many. They were elders. They had won wars before most species learned to use fire. Learn from children who lived less than a century? Impossible, insulting. "We are losing," Hana said simply. The chamber went quiet. "We are losing because we fight the same way we always have. The Ravagers have adapted to us, but they have not adapted to the humans. Perhaps we should ask ourselves why." Taemin supported her, though it hurt his pride to do so. "I have 600 years of military experience, but in the last 3 months, Captain Jiwoo has shown me tactics I never considered. Not because I am stupid, but because I was taught to think in certain ways. The humans were not taught those same ways." A new voice spoke up. Elder Wu Jin was young by council standards, only 300 years old. Many older elders did not take him seriously yet. "I would like to volunteer to train with the humans, to learn their methods directly." "You would lower yourself to train with them?" an older elder asked with clear disapproval. "I would raise myself by learning new skills," Wu Jin replied calmly. After hours of debate, the council approved a trial program. Younger elders would embed with human forces for joint training. Wu Jin led the first group. Meanwhile, Admiral Min Seo arrived from Earth with reinforcements and supplies. She was 51 years old, which made her ancient by human standards. She moved slowly and carefully, her body showing signs of wear that made Sunyi's medical reports make more sense. This human had already lived more than half her expected lifespan. Every moment cost her. "I understand you want to learn our tactics," Minseo said when she met with Taimin and Hana. "I am here to help, but you need to understand something first. Our methods will not feel natural to you." "We are willing to try," Hana said. The joint training exercises began the next day. Elder Wu Jin and his group joined human pilots for simulation runs. The first exercise was a simple patrol through an asteroid field. The elders approached it carefully, planning their route in advance and calculating every movement. The humans just flew in. They made decisions every second, adjusting to conditions in real time. When one path looked dangerous, they instantly picked another. They trusted their instincts and kept moving. The elders kept trying to stop and plan, which the humans found frustrating. "You think too much," Subin told Wu Jin after a particularly difficult simulation. She was a commander now, promoted after her heroics at Korath Nebula. "Sometimes you just have to move and figure it out as you go." "But what if you make a mistake?" Wu Jin asked. "Then you make a mistake and learn from it," Subin said with a shrug. "That is how we get better." This concept was strange to the elders. They were taught to plan until mistakes were nearly impossible. But that meant they rarely took risks. They rarely tried new things. The humans failed constantly in training, but each failure taught them something. The ground combat training was even more shocking. Sergeant Dong Min, now a lieutenant, demonstrated human infantry tactics. He showed how to use terrain in ways the elders never considered. How to sacrifice equipment to gain position. How to accept damage in one area to achieve advantage in another. "We call it calculated risk," Dongmin explained. "We know we might lose something, but we decide it is worth it." An engineering specialist named Kyung-soo showed the elders his workshop. The place was chaotic, full of parts and tools and half-finished projects. He was working on a modified weapon system that technically should not function. It was held together with wire and welds and what looked like tape. "This breaks 3 laws of physics," an elder engineer said, examining the device. "Maybe your 3 laws," Kyung-soo said with a grin. "In practice it works," he demonstrated. The weapon fired perfectly with better accuracy than the standard elder version. "But it could explode," the elder engineer protested. "It could," Kyung-soo admitted, "but it probably will not. And in combat probably is good enough." This idea of accepting imperfection was difficult for elders to grasp. They built things to last for centuries, to function perfectly. The humans built things to work well enough for now, knowing they would replace or improve them later. The real test came when the Ravagers attacked the Forge Worlds, a system of industrial planets that produced weapons and ships for the Council. If they fell, the Council's ability to replace losses would be crippled. Tamian and Minseo worked together to plan the defense. It was the first time an elder and a human had jointly commanded a major battle. They argued for hours about tactics, each proposing ideas the other thought was crazy. "Your plan is too rigid," Minseo said, studying Taemin's carefully laid out formations. "Your plan is chaos," Taemin replied, looking at her fluid, adaptive strategy. Hana watched them debate and suddenly understood. "What if we combine both? Use elder strength to create structure, then let human forces exploit opportunities within that structure." They looked at each other. It might work. The battle began with elder ships forming a defensive wall around the Forge Worlds. They moved in perfect formation, their heavy weapons creating a barrier of firepower. The Ravagers attacked as expected, trying to find weaknesses in the line. Then the human fighters swooped in. They did not follow the elder formations. They moved through gaps around flanks above and below. They attacked from unexpected angles and retreated before the Ravagers could respond. When the Ravagers adapted to the human tactics, the elders shifted their formation to exploit the confusion. It was like a dance. The elders provided steady rhythm and structure. The humans added improvisation and surprise. Together they created something neither could do alone. Wu Jin, flying in a mixed squadron of elder and human pilots, experienced it directly. He learned to trust Su Bin when she dove into impossible situations. She learned to trust him when he held formation under heavy fire. They covered each other's weaknesses and amplified each other's strengths. The Ravagers, for the first time since the war began, seemed confused. Their adaptation protocols could not handle the combination of ancient discipline and youthful chaos. They made mistakes, hesitated, pulled back to regroup. They are retreating, Hana said with wonder in her voice. The Ravagers are actually retreating. On his flagship, Taman felt something he had not experienced in 400 years. Excitement. Not just satisfaction at a job well done, but genuine excitement about battle. The chaos was beautiful. The unpredictability was thrilling. He had forgotten that war could be anything other than calculated exchanges. After the battle, the mixed squadrons celebrated together. Elder and human pilots shared stories and drinks. Wu Jin listened to Subin describe her latest crazy maneuver and found himself laughing. Actually laughing, something he rarely did. Daehyun called an assembly of all forces. His massive form stood before thousands of warriors, both elder and human. His voice was old and deep and carried across the entire hangar. "We have been legendary elders for millennia," he said. "We thought we knew everything about war. Today we learned from species who measure their lives in decades. Some might see shame in this. I see only wisdom. The universe is vast and old, but it always has new lessons for those willing to learn." He gestured to the human section. "These warriors have reminded us what we forgot. That every battle matters. That every moment matters. That legends are not made by living long but by living well." The cheering that followed came from every species present. In that moment, the division between elder and human felt smaller. They were all warriors. They were all fighting for the same thing. Minseo stood beside Tai Min watching the celebration. "Your people are good students," she said. "Your people are good teachers," Taemin replied. "Though I suspect we still have much to learn." "We all do," Minseo said. "That is the point. We never stop learning." The Ravagers made their final move 6 months after the humans first arrived. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon they had was directed toward one target: Velkara Prime, the Council homeworld, the heart of Elder civilization. Intelligence reports came from Commander Bo-Ra, who had been tracking Ravager movements for weeks. She stood in the command center, exhausted but focused. "They are bringing everything. Every force we have seen and probably more we have not. This is their endgame." Taemin studied the tactical displays. The numbers were overwhelming. 10,000 Ravager capital ships with countless smaller vessels. Behind them was something new that the sensors could barely identify. A massive ship, larger than anything they had seen before. "That is their nexus," Hana said, her crystalline form pulsing with anxiety. "Our analysis suggests the Ravager hive mind is controlled from that ship. If we can destroy it, their coordination will collapse. How do we reach it?" Daehyun asked. "It is protected by their entire fleet." Hana brought up a star map. The Nexus ship was positioned behind a stellar phenomenon, where the 2 stars of the Velkara system were pulling matter from each other. The radiation in that zone was intense enough to fry navigation systems and blind sensors. "No ship can navigate through that," an elder admiral said. "You would be flying blind in conditions that change every second." The council chamber fell into grim silence. Elder Sang-hee, the ancient historian who rarely spoke, stood up slowly. She was so old that no one knew her exact age. Some said 2,000 years, some said more. "If we evacuate, we lose more than this planet," Sang-hee said quietly. "We lose who we are. We lose our identity. We become a people without a home." "Better that than extinction," another elder argued. "Is it?" Sang-hee asked. "What are we without our purpose? Without our duty to protect?" Captain Jiwoo had been listening quietly. She stepped forward, her small human frame dwarfed by the massive elders around her. In 6 months of constant combat, she had aged visibly. New lines on her face, gray streaks in her hair. She was burning through her short life fighting this war. "There might be a way," Jiwoo said. "The radiation will blind your sensors. But humans do not rely on sensors as much as you do. We can fly by instinct and calculation. If we can get through the radiation zone, we can reach the Nexus." "It would be a suicide mission," Taemin said flatly. "The probability of success is greater than 0, Jiwoo interrupted, echoing the words Colonel Hyun-soo had used months ago at Themis. "And 0 is what we have if we do not try." The plan came together quickly. The Elder fleet would engage the Ravagers directly, creating an opening through their lines. Human ships would punch through to the radiation zone and attempt to reach the Nexus. It was desperate. It was dangerous. It was the only chance they had. Every Elder ship and every human vessel prepared for battle. 40,000 Elder warships, the largest fleet ever assembled. and 120 human ships, all that remained of the original 200. The battle began at dawn. The twin suns rose over Velkara Prime, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. Taman gave the order, and the Elder fleet moved forward in formations perfected over millennia. They fought with everything they had learned, both from their own experience and from the humans. The Ravagers met them with equal ferocity. The space between the planet and the enemy fleet became a storm of weapons fire and exploding ships. Elder vessels executed maneuvers that would have been impossible 6 months ago, combining their traditional discipline with human-inspired adaptability. Captain Young Ho commanded the human strike force from his ship, the UNSS Indomitable. He was 45 years old, and like all humans in the fleet, he looked older than he was. The stress of constant combat had worn him down, but his eyes were still sharp, his hands still steady. "All ships, follow me," Young Ho said calmly. "We fly through hell and we come out the other side. No matter what." The Elder fleet opened a corridor through the Ravager lines. It cost them dearly. Thousands of ships took damage or were destroyed to create that narrow path. But it worked. The humans shot through the gap at maximum speed. Then they entered the radiation zone. Elder crews watching from their ships saw the humans disappear into a wall of fire and chaos. Sensors could not track them. Communications cut out. It was like they had vanished into another dimension. Inside the radiation zone, Young Ho and his pilots flew blind. Their sensors showed nothing but static. Navigation systems failed. They flew by instinct and mathematics, calculating angles in their heads, trusting their training and each other. Subin led her fighter squadron through the chaos. Her cockpit displays were dead. She navigated by looking out her window, by feeling the pull of gravity from nearby masses, by counting seconds and remembering vectors. Around her, other pilots did the same. Some made mistakes and were lost, but enough survived to keep going. Lieutenant Yunji commanded a medical ship at the edge of the radiation zone. Her orders were to stay safe and pick up survivors after the battle. But when damaged human fighters started limping back through the radiation, she moved her ship closer to recover them. Elder officers ordered her to retreat. She ignored them. "I am not leaving anyone behind," Yunji said simply. She held position in the dangerous zone, recovering pilot after pilot even as her own ship took damage from the radiation. Deep in the chaos, Young Ho found the Nexus ship. It was massive, grown from the same dark material as all Ravager vessels, but 1,000 times larger. His ship was damaged, systems were failing, his crew was injured. But they had reached their target. "All remaining ships, concentrate fire on my position," Young Ho ordered. 16 human vessels emerged from the radiation storm, all that remained of the 120 that had entered. They attacked the Nexus with everything they had. Their weapons, designed by both human and Elder engineers, tore into the massive ship. The Nexus tried to defend itself, but it was not built for direct combat. It relied on its escorts, and the escorts could not navigate the radiation zone to help it. Young Ho's ship took a direct hit. Critical systems failed. The Indomitable was dying. "Captain, we need to evacuate," his second officer said. Young Ho looked at the Nexus ship. It was damaged but not destroyed, not yet. He made a decision that every human in the fleet would remember forever. "Evacuate the crew," he ordered. "I am staying." "Sir, that is an order." "Get them to the escape pods, now." As his crew abandoned ship, Young Ho took manual control. He aimed the Indomitable directly at the Nexus and pushed the engines to maximum. The ship accelerated, going faster and faster. At the last moment, he whispered a message into his comm system. Not to anyone specific, just to the universe. "We were here. We mattered." The Indomitable struck the Nexus ship at incredible speed. The explosion lit up the radiation zone like a second sun. Outside the chaos, the entire Ravager fleet convulsed. Without the Nexus coordinating them, they became confused, disorganized, vulnerable. Daehyun saw the moment and seized it. "All ships, advance!" His voice boomed across every channel. "For Velkara! For the fallen! For the future!" The Elder fleet charged. They fought with renewed fury, combining centuries of skill with the fierce determination they had learned from the humans. The Ravagers, for all their ability to adapt, could not handle the sudden loss of coordination. They broke. They scattered. They fled. The battle was won, but the cost was terrible. The space around Velkara Prime was filled with debris. Thousands of elder ships destroyed, all but 30 human vessels lost. In the aftermath, Jiwoo stood on the steps of the reconstructed council chambers. She was one of the few surviving human commanders. Subin stood beside her, promoted to commander after her squad fought through the radiation zone and back. Dongmin was there, now a lieutenant, and Jae-hyun, the young private who held the choke point at Themis, was there too. He was 20 years old now and had more decorations than soldiers twice his age. Elder Sang-hee approached them slowly. The ancient historian carried a data crystal in her weathered hands. "I have been recording the history of our people for longer than most civilizations have existed," Sang-hee said. "Today I add a new chapter. We were called legendary elders, and we were legends indeed. Then humanity arrived. These brief burning lives who taught us that wisdom is not only found in long years but in fierce hearts." She placed the data crystal in Jiwoo's hands. "This is our history now. Yours and ours together. We became something greater than legend. We became hope." The council held a vote that night. It was unanimous. Humanity was granted full elder status, the first species ever elevated in a single generation rather than over millennia. Hana noted the irony. "Most of these humans will not live long enough to enjoy centuries of honor." Jiwoo smiled, though her eyes were tired. "Then we better make the years we have count." Weeks later, Woojin found himself in the reconstructed gardens of Velkara Prime. Elder and human children played together, mixing games from both cultures. He watched them with Sunyi, the biologist who had first studied human physiology. "They are teaching our children human games," Sunyi observed. "Chaotic, unpredictable games." "Good," Woojin said. "We needed the chaos. We were so legendary we had stopped learning. They reminded us that every day matters, even short days, especially short days."